The National News Desk. Locally covered, nationally connected. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Taylor Murray. A solemn day in the United States as we mark 24 years since the tragedy of 9/11. Memorial services held across the country, including New York City. At the Pentagon, outside of Washington, D.C., as well as Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And we will have more from all of those events throughout our show. This morning, the FBI gave an update on what they found.
We have recovered what we believe is the weapon.
The Journal is reporting sources told them investigators found ammunition engraved with expressions of transgender and anti-fascist ideology inside the rifle, similar to how ammo was engraved in the shooting of the United Healthcare CEO in December of last year. The National News Desk, David Ochoa, is now in Utah tracking the latest updates in this investigation on the ground. And David, we are waiting for the FBI to give a new update. In the meantime, what else have we learned today?
Well, Taylor, that's right. We got that update a little earlier this morning. There was one that was scheduled for this afternoon, but that has since been canceled. We're expecting more information soon. But yes, the FBI did release a photo of the suspect. They also told us that they tracked this person onto the campus, onto the roof, and then after the shooting, they jumped off the roof and went into a neighborhood. And after searching around, they did find that rifle in a wooded area, along with the shoe and palm prints. Now, FBI Special Agent in charge of Salt Lake says that this shooting was an attack on America's principles.
Any attack on the First Amendment is an attack on the very foundation of our democracy. That is why we will relentlessly pursue this case and the shooter until we find him.
Now, again, we are expecting more information coming up at some point later today, and then we'll have hopefully more information about the shooter and just about the investigation in general. And then, of course, when we have that, we'll report that. But for right now, I'll send it back to you, Taylor.
Yeah, and David, how is the local community reacting to all of this? Because a lot of students were there when this assassination happened. It's very disturbing.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen pictures of just the barricading in the classrooms that students did. And just earlier today, a lot of the students came back to get their stuff that they left. We talked to one person who left their shoes here because they were dancing in class and had to come back. Of course, all the other kind of equipment and school supplies that they left here. But people are just shocked in general, just the fact that it would happen here at UVU in Orem, Utah, down here in Utah County. So it's just been a very surprising incident here for many people, for students, for the people who live around here. And so they're still trying to wrap their heads around it, and hopefully getting more information from officials will help them kind of understand it more as this manhunt continues. We're reporting live from Orem, David Ochoa, KUTV, the Live News Desk.
And of course, our hearts go out to the community there in Utah and of course, Kirk's family. David, thank you. Several historically black colleges and universities went into lockdown Thursday after receiving threats. This includes Hampton University and Virginia State University. The two schools are less than 50 miles apart in Virginia. At least 4 other HBCUs are reporting similar situations, including Southern University in Louisiana and Alabama State University. Hampton University has already canceled classes for tomorrow and is now urging students and staff to minimize movement across the campus until further notice. Well, the suspected shooter at a Denver area high school yesterday has been identified as 16-year-old Desmond Holly. Holly died last night from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but not before 3 other students at Evergreen High School were injured. 2 students remain hospitalized, one of whom is in critical condition, and the other's condition is unknown. The 3rd victim has been released from the hospital after suffering non-life-threatening injuries. The suspect in the horrific deaths of an elderly couple in their New York City home is now in custody. Police say they found Jamel McGriff yesterday evening near Times Square. Now, he's accused of breaking into the home of Frank and Maureen Oten on Monday, killing them and setting the home on fire. There's no known connection between the victims and McGriff.
That terrible morning 24 years ago, time itself stood still. The laughter of school children fell silent. The rush of our traffic came to an absolute halt. And for 2,977 innocent souls and their families, the entire world came crashing down so suddenly.
President Donald Trump giving a moving tribute this morning at the Pentagon as he was joined by First Lady Melania Trump and the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, marking 24 years since the tragedy of September 11th, 2001. 184 civilians and service members died at the Pentagon when American Airlines Flight 77 crashed at 9:37 in the morning. New York City held a citywide moment of silence at 8:46 this morning and another at 9:03 a.m. to commemorate the 2 planes that struck the north and south towers of the World Trade Center. 2,753 people died there at the World Trade Center site, including civilians in and around the buildings, as well as more than 400 first responders. And officials gathered in the field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, to ring the bell and say the names of the 40 passengers and crew on board Flight 93. Of course, 24 years ago, they bravely fought back against the terrorists who hijacked the flight and regained control before it crashed. It is believed that plane was headed to the United States Capitol building.
Their decision to fight back against the terrorists who had hijacked their plane saved an untold number of lives and preserved the U.S. Capitol, the symbol and center of our democracy.
People call it the first victory in the battle of terror. Of course, we will have more on today's 9/11 tributes later in the show. In other news now, here's a live look over Chicago, where the Department of Homeland Security says ICE has arrested multiple criminal illegal aliens since Operation Midway Blitz began Monday. And you can see some of those migrants' mugshots here. The department says some of the crimes they committed include sexually assaulting a child, family member, rape, armed robbery, and domestic battery. The Trump administration's effort to deport Guatemalan and Honduran children living in shelters or foster homes after migrating here alone is now on hold. Today, an Arizona judge extended a temporary block on the effort. A legal aid group is suing, claiming the government is not following laws meant to protect migrant children. The administration argues it's trying to reunite children with their families. Take a look at your screen. This is a chartered plane headed to South Korea, carrying more than 300 South Korean nationals who were arrested for illegally being in the United States last week. 475 illegals in all were detained when ICE officials raided a Hyundai electric vehicle plant in Atlanta. And the passengers on this flight will be repatriated back into South Korea after their 15-hour flight. Opening statements for the trial of Ryan Routh, the man charged with attempted assassination of Donald Trump, began today. Routh, who is representing himself, was reprimanded twice by Judge Eileen Cannon and then cut off from finishing his opening. Routh spent his time meandering through his philosophical comments, even talking about prehistoric man. The prosecution, on the other hand, was more prepared as we begin to learn more about the case. The National News Desk, Jack Wu, is in Fort Pierce.
The prosecution had a plan and they stuck to it. They were thorough from their opening statement to the questioning of their witnesses. It all started in the beginning when they laid everything out for the jury. Federal prosecutors have Ryan Routh in a corner. The jury will see and hear about the 10 phones federal agents found that Ryan Routh used in his plot. Prosecutors can show jurors photos of the sniper's nest, a map of the golf course, and 2 eyewitnesses. One a Secret Service agent, the other a Good Samaritan. The prosecution can trace his premeditation to Hawaii in July of 2024, when he reached out to a friend in North Carolina about buying a gun. He couldn't get one since he was already a convicted felon. Then comes the list Routh made of supplies he needed for his stakeout, including non-perishable food items and diapers. The investigation then revealed Routh was moving around the country using 3 aliases: Brian Olson, John White, and John Smith. Routh had so many identities to keep track of, he tried to stay organized by keeping a written list of the fake names and which stolen license plates they coincided with. The list was recovered when Routh was arrested. With so many exhibits and potentially damning testimony, Routh has his work cut out for him. They also certainly took their time. They used the entire 40 minutes allotted to them and then some, going over by 1 minute. Reporting in Fort Pierce, I'm Jack Wu.
The wife of former Senator Bob Menendez is sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. Nadine Menendez was convicted of bribery in April. Prosecutors accused Nadine of facilitating bribes for her husband when they began dating. Bob Menendez, of course, is serving that 11-year sentence. He was convicted of taking bribes, extortion, and acting as an agent of the Egyptian government. Still ahead, the new steps being taken to protect public figures in the wake of the political activist Charlie Kirk's death. Then the monetary losses big cities are dealing with due to a surge in retail crime over the past few years. Also on the way, the dramatic decline we're seeing in honeybees that are critical for food production around the world. We're back in 90 seconds.
Pleased to announce that I will soon be awarding Charlie Kirk posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
President Trump eulogizing political activist Charlie Kirk during Thursday morning's 9/11 remembrance ceremony at the Pentagon. Kirk's political influence is being recognized by both Republicans and Democrats. A proud champion of the Christian faith and biblical truth, he spent his entire adult life trying to rally young voters to the Republican Party. We take a look at what's being said about his lasting legacy.
His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever.
He prided himself on giving critics the opportunity to debate him.
Constitutional rights apply to everyone within the United States' jurisdiction.
To a limited extent. Will you admit that he was lying, or at least didn't come through on his promises?
No. I mean, he's trying to end the Russian-Ukrainian war.
Liberal New York Times columnist Ezra Klein writing, "You can dislike much of what Kirk believed, and the following statement is still true. Kirk was practicing politics in exactly the right way. He was showing up to campuses and talking with anyone who would talk to him." The New York Post front page Thursday quoting Kirk, who preached about having reasonable disagreements without resorting to violence. Some of his arguments were, no doubt, extremely polarizing during his life.
A man who calls himself trans is wearing woman face no different than I would wear blackface trying to be a black person.
I understand.
And after his death.
I'm not going to mince words. I genuinely found some of Charlie Kirk's views to be violent, abhorrent. No one, that doesn't mean you murder someone. I mean, it's horrific.
Exactly. But the results of his efforts were undeniable. He and his Turning Point USA organization were credited with contributing to a historic shift among young voters to the Republican Party last year. Analysis of the 2024 election revealed that voters aged 18 to 29 shifted to Trump by 12 percentage points compared to 2020. A result that Kirk explained to Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom earlier this year.
We believe Democrats were taking them for granted. We saw some of the fault lines there. And to President Trump's credit, he also harmonized with the strategy by going on podcasting and using TikTok.
And now, in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, as well as the recent history of political violence over the last few years, lawmakers are considering new efforts to ensure the safety of political members on all sides of the aisle.
We're in a deliberate review process right now to determine what measures are appropriate, how much we could allocate for that. We've got to protect people who run for public office, or no one will. And that's heavy on our hearts and minds as we also, work through the trauma of what happened yesterday.
Meanwhile, at least 2 high-profile speaking engagements have been indefinitely postponed. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has called off her planned event in Raleigh, North Carolina this weekend. She says it's both out of respect for Charlie as well as a concern for safety of herself and the rally goers. And the Ronald Reagan Center indefinitely postponed Ben Shapiro's engagement last night following the assassination. All 3 major stock indices ended the day at record highs. The Dow gained 617 points, crossing the 46,000-point mark for the first time. The other 2 main indices also had big days. And traders remain optimistic even though inflation is getting worse as of August, according to new government data. Consumer prices increased 2.9% from a year earlier, up from 2.7% the month before. It's the biggest price increase since January. Now, core prices, which include food and energy, rose more than 3%. This could complicate the Federal Reserve's decision next week to cut or hold interest rates. Well, a grim sign for the U.S. labor market. Jobless claim applications jumped to their highest level in almost 4 years. The Labor Department reports the number of Americans filing for unemployment benefits last week rose by 27,000 to 263,000. It is the biggest week-to-week increase in almost a year and the most applications since the week of October 23rd, 2021. Well, some of the nation's largest cities, like ones in California, like San Francisco, and like New York, which you see here, are facing major economic losses because stores cannot keep merchandise on shelves. In fact, since 2019, retail crime surged 93%, resulting in billions of dollars of losses, and that's according to the National Retail Federation. And looking at the year 2022, for example, the NRF says U.S. retailers lost $112 billion due to theft. Big box retailers are also losing big, like Target alone projecting $500 million in additional losses this year due to organized retail crime. Now, major cities with high retail theft are seeing retailers leave town, meaning less foot traffic and, of course, less sales tax revenue, snowballing to even more of an economic hit. The Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund just releasing a bombshell new report detailing how donors and activists control progressive prosecutors and, in the Legal Defense Fund's words, corrupt the criminal justice system. As the National News Desk, Jeff Harris shows us, the report focuses on one specific consultancy group.
Titled Outsourcing Justice, the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund looked into dozens of progressive prosecutors, those who usually prioritize reforms to the criminal legal system, elected to office over the last 10 years. What it found, while many are linked to donor-affiliated organizations, there's a group called the Wren Collective. The LELDF claims is exerting influence on policies, controlling messaging, and getting involved in cases. Jason Johnson, president of the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund, tells us in the over 60-page report, they found the Wren Collective is directly tied to over 40 elected district attorneys in 22 states, exerting behind-the-scenes influence to help shape decisions.
Our working hypothesis was, based on other reports, was that the Wren Collective was actually guiding in a very substantial way the policies of those individual offices.
But who is the Wren Collective and how does it operate? According to the report, launched in 2020, the organization works as a campaign and PAC consultant for progressive prosecutor races run by former public defender Jessica Brand. It provides free policy, communication, and legal support, all funded by foundations and groups backed by left-wing billionaires, including George Soros and Carrie Tuna.
The Wren Collective is a for-profit limited liability company. It is not a 501c3 or 501c3 or C4. It operates on a for-profit basis.
This map, put together by the LELDF, details where Wren-linked progressive prosecutors are located. As you can see, the dots spread across the country, some in large cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Minneapolis, Philadelphia, others in smaller areas like Burlington, Vermont, and Memphis, Tennessee. Based on over 20 public record request disclosures, tax forms, and campaign filings, the report digging into the nature, scale, and scope of what it says is the collective's corruptive influence on justice policy under these progressive prosecutors.
So essentially what you have here is you have a situation where the donors retain control over the prosecutor's behavior.
Included in the report, an email from Amy Weber, a senior attorney under Jessica Brand, sent in 2020, which the LELDF says sums everything up. The fund highlighting multiple portions, including a section where Wren brags about writing model policies, abolishing bail, and reducing jail populations by Soros-funded DAs in Virginia. Another section highlighting the policies the collective says it's already written that are ready to adopt verbatim, including plea guidelines, juvenile transfer, and probation.
The Wren Collective is filling the gap, developing policies, helping to implement those policies.
Now, the report's conclusion, based off these findings, donors and activists can essentially buy access and influence over a prosecutor's policies, undermining the criminal justice system.
The Wren Collective is actually writing the playbook. The elected prosecutors, the democratically elected prosecutors, are simply reading the script.
In an email to Fox News Digital, Brand did defend the collective's work while also critiquing the LELDF. It's strange that when there are major mental health challenges in law enforcement and a recruitment crisis, this organization wants to focus on Wren and what the LELDF surely knows is common practice among conservative and progressive organizations alike who work with these officers, rather than how to help officers. Now, we have also reached out to the Wren Collective and Brand requesting comment on the report's findings, but have yet to get a response. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
Breaking right now, just into this newsroom, the U.S. Naval Academy and Naval Support Activity Annapolis are on lockdown. This is after reports of a threat that's according to USNI News, citing a Navy official. Students and staff have been told to shelter in place. Of course, we are actively working to learn more about exactly what's going on there. As soon as we do, we will update you here on air, also online. This is a developing story. Stay with us. Coming up, why more and more people are choosing RVs as a permanent place to live right after this. reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America, and we start in Nevada, where people can now explore Las Vegas in robo-taxis.
Please do the honors.
Press to start ride.
And that's it.
4 seats, individualized temperature controls, wireless charging, and more. Zoox is an autonomous vehicle that Chief Product Officer Michael White says is an experience the company is excited to share with Las Vegas.
It's a city about innovation, and this is innovation. This is AI, as we hear 15 times a day, right? But AI is in service of us. We're traveling, the AI is doing the work, and we can get time back.
So far, there are 50 Zoox vehicles across Las Vegas and San Francisco.
The fruit we eat and the flowers we enjoy are possible thanks to honeybees.
And honeybees overall pollinate about 40% of the food. Go and say hi to the bees.
For longtime beekeeper Quentin Giant, hanging with honeybees is sweet.
Being with the bees, honestly, it's awesome.
But lately, the buzz is being killed.
We are looking at over 60% colony losses nationally, which is a staggering high number. About 43% of Washington beekeepers lost their colonies.
There are several reasons why bees are vanishing. These include poor nutrition, parasites, pesticides, and pathogens.
Well, housing market is showing signs of weakening along with the labor market.
Fewer jobs leading to fewer homes. That is the concern for economics professor Kirk Soidemir, who says President Donald Trump's tariffs are making the cost of building homes stay high. Southern Nevada's more than 7,200 single-family homes on the market is up nearly 37% from a year ago. But with less buying, there is less building for those new homes. People are turning to more affordable alternatives like RVs.
Everyone has a preconceived notion that RVs are, just for camping, which they can be. They can be just for camping, but a lot of people these days are using them to live in.
After a down payment, what are we talking per month?
Something like this is actually going to cost roughly about $750 to $850 per month.
Coming up, the event President Trump is attending this evening in honor of the 9/11 attacks. This evening, President Trump is attending the Yankees-Tigers game at Yankee Stadium in New York City in honor, of course, of September 11th. Ceremonies before the game are commemorating the victims and heroes of the attacks. Security is heightened, of course, for Trump's appearance. That game begins in less than an hour. That's all the time we have for this edition of the National News Desk. I'm Taylor Murray. Thanks for watching.